All right, please let's listen up. Hello. Now, we'll be looking at factors responsible for lack of cooperativity. We've seen enzyme cooperativity as a phenomenon whereby the activity of an enzyme is what? Regulated, right? By the binding of a substrate or a ligand to the enzyme. Now, there are two factors that can lead to lack of cooperativity. And the two factors, number one, low substrate concentration. Low substrate concentration. Now, if the substrate is very low, that is, the enzyme concentration is high, you see that even if, take for example, you have something like this. Let's say all these enzymes have two binding sites and you have just two substrates. You discover that these two substrates will bind to one enzyme, right? Because the enzyme is dimeric. Then we still have three enzymes, no substrate to bind with them, and so there will be no cooperativity. Now, if fractional saturation, represented as bar Y, is less than 0.1, what that should tell you is that there is low substrate what? Concentration. Remember that fractional saturation is given as what? Enzyme bound all over what? Total enzyme, right? Enzyme bound all over total enzyme. Now, if you calculate this and the value you are having is less than 0.1, you should know that the substrate level is what? Low. Now, if you calculate this and what you are having is greater than 0.9, you should know that we have few enzymes, but meaning that the substrate is high, right? The substrate is high and the enzymes are few. So if fractional saturation is greater than 0.9, then we have few enzymes with less binding sites. Few enzymes means that the substrate is higher than the enzyme, is it not? So if fractional saturation is below 0.1, which one is low? Substrate, is it not? If it is above 0.9, which one is high? Which one is high? Substrate. And which one is low? Enzymes, right? So the two factors responsible for lack of cooperativity, low substrate concentration that is seen when fractional saturation is less than 0.1, and few enzymes that is seen when fractional saturation is greater than 0.9. The question that is always coming out here, let me read it to show you how it comes out. Now, I just picked this a random year. If you check there, you still see it. Now, listen to this question. If binding a ligand to enzyme is positive, if binding a ligand to enzyme is positive and cooperativity is expected, what may be responsible for the fractional saturation to be below 0.1 or above 0.9? What may be responsible for the fractional saturation to be below 0.1 or above 0.9? Anytime you're answering a question like this, always paraphrase the question as the beginning of your answer. It's a good practice that when you are answering exam question, you paraphrase the question as the beginning of your answer. So if you are answering this question, you can start with, since they said, what may be responsible for the fractional saturation to be below 0.1 or above 0.9, you can start with, what may be responsible for the fractional saturation to be below 0.1 is what? Low substrate concentration. Why? If the fractional saturation is above 0.9, what may be responsible is what? Few enzymes with less. That's the answer to that question. This one does not require plenty grammar. You don't need to draw. But if you want to draw and you're an artist,